Ask you standing like right here. Yeah. I asked Brandon to say something, but I'll let you I want to offer it to everybody. Yeah. I agree. Thank you. Thank you. What's your son like? What's up? How are you? Yeah.
I just wanted one right before I came back.
Answer that.
Like that. That's that. Good evening, everyone.
You got it.
So welcome to.
Not ready. Ready or not?
Yes. Yeah. I may not need one. You want to get me okay? Yes. Fabulous. Let's do it. So welcome to the 2023 Empower and Teacher Voice Award. With Empower Ed. There are many ways to describe the work that we do at Empower Ed, but one of the best ways is to say that we are human-centered and policy-oriented. We value the human rights of students, families, and educators, so we campaign during the school year to move those rights from ideas to policy. Our work is twofold. One, our teacher fellows engage in education advocacy, where we mount campaigns that target DC education policy makers, and we advocate for public school education equity, fairness, and justice for the entire public education community in DC. That's worth a hand clap. All of our team is involved in school-based work where we bring wellness conversations to the whole staff and support every educator in the building with access to wellness, which means more autonomy with respect and consideration of teachers' time during the school day. Our time is valuable. Empower Ed is human-centered and policy-oriented towards change. The words liberty and justice for all in the schoolhouse sometimes fall short. Teacher voice is silenced, the student experience is not always equitable, and principals are expected to have the answers for everything all the time. True liberty and justice must be accepting of diversity, characterized by teamwork and support among peers, with all stakeholders working together to achieve the same goals. But this type of work does not happen without a conscious decision at all levels to clearly define and model behavior that will ultimately impact our students. That's why teacher voice organizations like Empower Ed are important. They need community support and community backing when it comes to urging lawmakers to be more human-centered and policy-oriented by accepting educator solutions and working to bring those solutions into law. With all that said, Scott Goldstein, the Executive Director of Empower Ed, will come and give a more candid talk on the work that Empower Ed did during school year 22-23. Let's give it up to Scott.
Thank you. Let's see if this is working. Hello?
Yep.
It is working?
Yep.
All right, awesome. Thank you, everybody. Welcome. Thank you all so much for being here. I want to start with a big thank you to Busboys and Poets, who's hosted this every year for us. I'm a huge supporter of our work and of teachers in education in DC for a very long time. So thank you to Andy and Busboys. I want to thank the other sponsors who have made it possible for a lot of our teachers to be here for free tonight and enjoy this. So Mark Vernon, the Mandy David team, Realtor extraordinaire back there. DC Action, Matt,
Yeah.
is here. DC Action. DC Action. And also the Washington Teachers Union and Robert E. Addison Associates. And so thank you all so much for being here. And I want to start really just with an overview of the kind of work that we've done over the past year. Hear from some of our the people who have fought alongside us in that work, and then the main event, which is our Teacher Voice Awards and honoring our teachers today. So Gracie, you can go ahead. So I want to start with just what it has looked like over the course of this year, which has really been a defining year and a transformative year in many ways. One is just bringing the city together to find solutions to some of our most urgent problems. We bring the city together in lots of different ways, from this panel that we held on flexible scheduling to our annual Teacher Voice Festival, events like the first annual Educator Wellness Symposium, which brought together all the groups who are working on educator wellness across the city and working with schools directly to do that work, to brainstorm about strategies and come together about what works in educator wellness. So, go to the next slide. So, I want to talk a lot about what the model is and how we approach making sure that we are embracing a diverse perspective of educator voices when we center solutions. Go ahead, Gracie. This is what it looks like to be diverse by design, equity by design, which is that we know that in halls of power and spaces where people are being heard, if there is not organizing, the people who show up are often the people with the most resources, the most time available to them, and disproportionately, certain voices get heard and certain voices do not get heard. And the only way to make sure that we are intentional about making policy that is centered in the people who are affected by the policy is to make sure that those represented, including our educators, those who work with our students to elevate those voices, those who work with our parents to elevate parent voices, are intentionally centering a representative group of educators, of students, of parents in our policy decisions. And that's why our fellowship every year is based on the idea that we're going to get together. In the current year, we're going up to 35 educators who are half public, half charter, who are representative almost exactly of the student population in the city, that are teaching every subject area, that are teaching elementary, middle, and high school, and adult and alternative education. So that if you come to these 35 educators, you are getting a really good sampling of the kinds of educators that teach in all of our schools, public, charter, across all 8 wards in the city. And so being intentional about the people that we elevate and help to go out and testify and come up with these policy solutions are a representative group of our city's educators and represent our students as well. So we specifically try to uplift these voices with a couple events that have been amazing over the last couple years. And we did this the first time with our Black Educator Story Lounge 2 years ago. Now the second annual this year, the Unapologetically Black Educator Story Lounge. And for the first time, we did an event we called Mojitos y Maestros, the Latina Educator Story Lounge. Spaces for just those communities and just those educators to be together, to tell their stories of the specific challenges, the specific triumphs, the work, and what it looks like for them, and be able to tell their own stories. So those are a couple of the events we've added over the last couple of years, which have really given voice specifically to those educators of color. Gracie? All right. So teacher-led, but not teachers alone. I think it's really important. We always say that our work is teacher-led advocacy, meaning the people who are involved are not just educators or classroom educators. And that when we come up with policy solutions, before we go live with them, before we're going out to the world with them, we are making sure we've talked to students about them, that we've talked to parent and families about them, that we work with other groups in the city who represent parents and families or who represent students to get their perspectives on the ideas before we are making sure that we are not just representing an educator alone perspective. We want to be based in educator ideas and teacher solutions, but make sure the ideas are inclusive of all the communities that are important to our schools. And then establishing new partnerships. It's been a big year in terms of new partnerships, whether it's, for example, with DC United, who has been a major partner and sponsor in teacher appreciation in a lot of different ways over the course of this year, and the kind of coalitions that we've joined for the first time this year, including the Hands Off DC coalition, which is, yeah, I can go on to that. Incredibly important right now, because none of what we do locally, right, matters if we are getting overruled by people on Capitol Hill who haven't spent a day in their lives in our schools or understand our city and our perspective. Proud to be part of that coalition, and also the Fair Budget Coalition. It's our first year in the Fair Budget Coalition, and being part of solutions that are forcing us by design to come together with all of the priorities, not just centering education in the traditional sense of this is what happens during the school hours. Because we know that if our students are not fed, our students are not housed, if all of those societal problems are not addressed equally and at the same time, that we cannot solve the problems alone in the schoolhouse. And so being part of that inclusive coalition with the Fair Budget Coalition and fighting together for budget priorities with them this year. So also driving the conversation, I take a lot of pride in making sure that when our media is covering our education stories, that they are doing so not about educators, but through educators and with educators. So we outreach aggressively to make sure that if they're going to cover education stories, that they're going to quote some educators, that they're going to get a diverse representation of educators in their stories. When it was Teacher Appreciation Week, we reached out to all the networks and said, hey, I know you got stories coming up about teacher appreciation. Can we make sure those stories are about what teachers want and need to enhance them being teachers, to be retained being teachers, and not just the kind of appreciation we see sometimes, which is really important. Everybody wants the buffet breakfast and the rewards that we get on Teacher Appreciation Week, but also centering the ideas teachers have about enhancing their own profession. And then holistic and fearless agenda. These are some of the issues we've worked on across the 5 teams that make up our fellow cohort each year, and take a lot of pride in our agenda being dictated by the teachers who are leading our work every year, and not outside forces, donors, love our donors, but being driven authentically by the teachers and what the teachers say are urgent priorities and where we have consensus. And actually, we encountered something this year which was a little unique, actually, and there's always disagreement about what should be prioritized first and next, and what we're going to center and what we're going to fight for. There were some really tricky issues this year where it was very difficult to get consensus among this very intentionally diverse group of educators. We had issues that came up that we didn't expect at the beginning of the year, where we had to make sure, I'll just name, for example, on the issue of charter teacher pay, that we intentionally are representing half of the teachers who are in our charter sector and half of the teachers in the DCPS sector, who had different views about that issue very clearly. And so it is that work every time we need to try to forge consensus and figure out what is reasonable and figure out those points where we can come together and support each other. Because I take a lot of pride in this being one of the few spaces where educators are brought together across lines that they often are not, across DCPS and charter, across elementary, middle, high school, etc., and being driven by their efforts. And then fighting for equity in the budget. You can see some of the priorities here, and you can go to the next one. This is some of the things we fought for, and just want to tell very quickly the story of one of these transformative ideas, which you all probably heard about a lot, exhaustively from us over the past couple of years, which is flexible scheduling. There are times when people say that what teachers want or what educators want might be at odds with what is best for our students or what is best for our families. And we always center in our discussions that we are looking for the win-win solutions that are better for the student experience and better for the educator experience. And believe that if we don't have a solution that is good for both, we got to keep fighting, keep working, because we're not at the solution yet. One of the most exciting ideas in that sphere has been this idea of flexible scheduling. And it's exciting precisely because this is an opportunity to do things that are transformative for students and transformative for adults. And so when we started talking about this 3 or 4 years ago, before the pandemic began, it was a little bit of a fringe idea at the time. As soon as the pandemic happened and everybody's jobs switched to remote and hybrid, and people started demanding flexibility, all of a sudden this became very mainstream, to the degree that teachers were like, hey, I can make more money working in a job that provides me a whole lot of flexibility and pays me just as much money. I can sit at home and write curriculum. But the truth is, teachers want to teach. They want to be with the students. They want to be in the classroom. So if we can give them just enough of that flexibility to balance work and life, to integrate their work and life in a way that makes sense for them, then we can keep those teachers in the classroom. But when we started, it was teachers coming up with what does it look like to have a holistic retention agenda, meeting with council members and discussing those ideas, start meeting with the Deputy Mayor of Education. Eventually, Council Member Robert White introduced legislation prominently featuring the ask on flexible scheduling for educators, as well as things like mental health days for educators. And then we testified, we kept working on it. And believe me, over the course of this year, I thought this was dead at least 10 times before it was revived. Up until about a day or two before it happened. Whether we were going to get money for this priority, whether it was going to be invested in, and I'm really, really proud to say that if we say something enough, and we make sure that it's coming from, that they're hearing from every voice, that students are talking about it, and our school leaders are talking about it, and our teachers are talking about it, that our city leaders have to react to it. And that's what we saw with flexible scheduling and a historic investment in doing something really, really transformative for our students, providing them additional enrichment, internships, vocational opportunities, enriching programs, while our teachers get the additional time they need to be sane, to be well, and also to call their parents, to grade their papers, to do the things they need to do as part of their job. And so that's kind of, we put out that report in the middle of the year, kept fighting for it throughout the year, and eventually got that victory. Looks like these are not going to load, so I'll say what they are, which is a bunch of videos that that we put out as we got closer to the budget. And though she's not here, I have to give huge credit to Yvette Arellano, who was our lead fellow this year in the Georgetown program, who was at Canva and social media and all things extraordinaire, who made sure that every little word that our teachers got out, so we could just say, teachers, can you give us 10 seconds on what you think about this thing? And she could turn it into a masterful social media collage of all the things teachers think about things. And it was really effective at making sure people were just constantly, every day, putting that material out there, new voices from educators. And so we made it happen. Go to the next slide. Gracie? Oh, is it stopping? Oh, you know what? Probably because it's trying to play these videos. There we go. All right, so you can see some of these big victories here. We asked for $1.6 million for Grow Your Own programs, a new teacher apprenticeship. We got $1.6 million for Grow Your Own programs. Really led on that and is instituting this new teacher apprenticeship program. We got the ask on flexible scheduling. Not as much money we wanted, but it's a long way towards getting there. Towards teacher raises and equitable pay scales for all public school teachers, and a huge shout out to Councilmember Fruman, who's here, who led the fight. And I want to talk about our educator wellness in schools, because in these settings, we talk a lot about our advocacy work, which is really important and where our teacher voice work is centered in our fellow program. But the truth is, we spend at least probably more than half of our time on our school-based partnerships, working one school at a time. You can go to the next slide. These are some of the photos of the different schools we've worked on. We went from 5 school partnerships to 12 school partnerships over the course of this year, and worked intensively with some schools over the past 2 years. And thanks to ASI and the technical assistance grant we got for educator wellness, to deeply support 5 schools over the past couple of years, and have expanded on our own to add an additional 7 schools for that and counting, where we're working deeply with these schools to bring the school leaders and the teachers and staff together to build a wellness plan, to build a wellness team, and to slowly work towards these goals. There are some schools that we've been working with for 2 going on 3 years, where we're trying to achieve things that are so fundamental to improving both the student and educator experience. But it's a slog, it's a grind. It involves bringing a lot of people together around those ideas and being on top of it and making sure you're building consensus and keeping the work going. So I'm really, really proud of the work we've been doing in schools. And a huge thank you to Gracie, who is back there at the table. Move up to full-time this year as our Director of Educator Wellness. School-based work. You can go to the next slide. And this just demonstrates the philosophy that we have, which is Educator wellness, student wellness is a cycle. That these two things go together and they feed into each other. We also launched, big part thanks to Gracie, this Educator Wellness Revolution podcast. So get out your Spotify, your Apple podcast, and subscribe if you haven't yet. We talked about every topic on this podcast. In the most recent episode, we hosted educators from all over the country, but in particular southern states, to talk about the book bans and the anti-CRT efforts in those states and how that's affecting the wellness of Black educators across the country. We've talked about restorative justice programs and hosted organizations like School Talk. Amazing opportunity just to talk about different aspects of wellness with important people in the scene. And we hosted the Educator Wellness Symposium, so expanding the work on educator wellness in so many ways this year. And now I'm going to turn it over to a few people who are leading and have been so critical to this work. We absolutely cannot do this work without allies in the State Board of Education, the DC Council, at OSSE, in the DME's office, and people who can make those teacher voices turn into reality through their advocacy and their policy action. So I'm very excited to turn it over right now to the Ward 6 State Board of Education representative, Brandon Best.
Thank you. How are you all feeling today? Good. It is an honor to stand here with you today. So I was going to start off with a little bit of levity, lighten up the mood a little bit, but after a couple failed jokes in the car, I realized that comedy really isn't my ministry. So hopefully you don't mind. I'm just going to dive right in. Right? When Scott shared his agenda with me, there was something that really stood out, and it was a phrase. And that phrase was fearless advocacy for systemic change. I'll repeat that again. Fearless advocacy for systemic change. And that phrase gave me goosebumps, right? It's the willingness to speak up, ruffle feathers, right? And to push the boundaries to what's possible. And so I'm saying, I believe that when we're thinking about our teachers and the teacher advocates that we have here and their fearless advocacy for change, I think that we should give them a round of applause for everything that they do. About standing up on the mountaintops and yelling that we deserve better, and we're going to stand and fight until we get what we deserve and when we get to what our students, our staff, and our families all deserve. Systemic change is not about tweaking a few policies or rearranging the furniture in the teacher's lounge, but it's about fundamentally transforming the very fabric of education, tearing down the barriers and building new bridges. So tonight, let's celebrate the fearless advocates in the rooms, the teachers who fearlessly shout, invest in flexible scheduling, or teacher retention begins with teacher wellness. Let's applaud those who fearlessly fight for funding, equitable resources, and inclusive learning environments. But remember, fearless advocacy for systemic change, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Hopefully it's more like a 10K, but like, I'm running on, right? That's another film. It does require persistence. It requires resilience and an unwavering belief that we can create a better future for each other, and most importantly, our students and our teachers. So tonight, I want to thank you. I want to thank the champions of education, the warriors of equity, and the architects of change. Let your voices echo through the council chambers and demand a better tomorrow. Because policies that don't make sense for teachers don't make sense for students. So thank you.
I'm going to say a word just quickly. I want to offer space to any other state board reps. I want to say a word quickly, but just about Representative Best. I invited him to speak tonight. For those who don't know Representative Best, he is a bridge builder and a phenomenal one. There are a lot of divisions in our political and political education system in DC, and I've been proud to get to know Brandon over the past couple of years and realize the degree to which it is possible, as Representative Thompson has done as well, to build bridges and to break down some of those barriers and to make sure that we're talking to each other and just have honest conversations when we disagree with each other, because the education is political, it's always been political, always will be political. I think that's a good thing, right? Because we should fight for our ideas, but it doesn't mean we should not be talking to each other and having honest dialogue when we disagree. And I want to just applaud Representative Best and the other two. who last year was an Empower Ed Senior Fellow and is now the Ward 1 State Board of Education.
Yeah. I don't think this is working. It's I'll try it again. It's been a long day in the classroom, but so yeah, I'm Ben Williams, a former Power Ed Fellow, still current teacher, and also the Ward 1 representative on the State Board of Education. My views are my views and do not represent the board.
We tried them.
It's been great. So I got involved with Empower Ed about 5 years ago, and some of my friends and colleagues were leaving the school that I was teaching at. And I was disheartened and just feeling bad about it. Like, we were losing great teachers. And one of them had mentioned that there was this happy hour that I could attend to be able to start doing something about it. They're like, oh, I think there's this new local nonprofit that is starting to do this work that, you know, is centered around retention. So I showed up at the happy hour. First time I had met Scott, and started meeting some of the same faces and teachers that I've seen in this room today. And over the past 5 years, it has been incredible to be a part of a group, all of us, really, right, to change the conversation of education in our city. And I think the reason that is so special that Empower Ed is able to do that is because it is of, by, and for Washingtonians, and for the people of this city. And not just teachers, not just students, it goes beyond those false binaries. And really is able to kind of do the things that Representative Fess was talking about is working towards transformational change, because there's so much work left to do. We have a crisis of teachers leaving our classrooms. And I see every day how that hurts students, with substitute teachers not being there, teachers coming in prep periods, you know, kids feeling bad as to why teachers are leaving. It's a problem. It's a huge problem. And Empower Ed helps us have honest conversations to be able to solve that. And the flexible scheduling is a huge step in the right direction, but it's only part of that work. And I'm encouraged to continue that work, the work of Vice President O'Leary and former Representative Wattenberg in moving the conversation forward around improving school culture in our city. So we have a lot of allies in this room, and I think the beauty of it is being able to work together to really do what's right for our kids and for our teachers, and to drown out the noise. Because there's a lot of people who say they have students' best interests, but when it comes down to it at the end of the day, they're not in our classrooms, they don't live in our city, and they don't know what's best for our kids. So I'm just grateful to be a part of this organization in the past and to continue to champion it and to continue to move that work forward. So thanks for letting me say a few words.
Representative O'Leary, our longest serving educator in the room. Say a few words.
I taught for 27 years. I love it. Being on the board hasn't been a challenge. It's been an experience. Every time that we try to do something and somebody says we can't do it, the board doesn't believe it. We had a fabulous meeting last night. We're going to be voting on the social studies standards in 2 weeks, which will revolutionize studying, teaching, and EC, and will filter out to the rest of the country. Make a whole lot of people pissed off about things. That's good. Need your support in giving us a little more power in our voices, since mayor is in charge of education and all the decisions are made downtown, and that's not where they should be made. It should start in the schools where the decisions should be made. And then I know how everyone in this room feels about everything that needs to be done in school. and I'm not gonna talk about it at all, because I still teach, and I still care. And I want us to have, as I, even when I ran, it was to make sure that everybody had a voice, and that our system would be the best education system in the United States. So we had a small step last night, and in 2 weeks we will vote on it. To make it that, but we will be known, and we need to make sure that our voices stay raised and sing higher and higher.
Gives me a good reason to mention. First of all, thank you to OSSI and the State Board for the collaboration you've done on the social studies standards, which is, but I also want to mention on Saturday, Teaching for Change, the DC Area Educator for Social Justice, is hosting the Teach Truth event, which will be the African American Civil War Memorial. And though we may not have the same problem that many states are experiencing in that way right now, I am hoping that you're wrong about the reaction to those standards, but I think it's very possible, right, that there will be a reaction from the rest of the country, and we want to stand up always for our educators and their right to teach the truth. So please come out to that. Want to say a quick hello, Representative Chang? I just want to you there.
Yes, hi everyone, I'm Alistair Chang, I represent Work 2, and I'll add one example of how this process that you're all part of, I think really works. So when I joined the board 2 years ago, I started by talking to 100 educators. Scott introduced me to a lot of them, Maya was one of them, and asked, listen, literacy is my top thing. I come from library work, my dad can't read, and I said, what do you think we need to do to actually improve reading outcomes in the city? And there was one thing that was very clearly rose to the top from what was being shared, and I was just sharing more of that of her experience in the classroom this last year. And with your help, we were able to raise that as an issue. I now get to work with Elizabeth Ross at OSSI on actually taking those recommendations that you started and move those through. We're going to be making really bold recommendations on how to make a really coherent literacy strategy coming out in September. Yes, that I would love your help with to continue to move forward and make sure that we actually take this as an opportunity to move forward. I use this one as an example to say I think the method that you're a part of with Scott and Empower Ed is really a really powerful method to make sure that what we're actually experiencing day to day in the classroom is reflected in our actual public policies. And so my ask to you is please help us with this very specific thing around what we're working on with literacy, but please keep doing the work and please keep building on this process because it works.
Thank you. Before we get to our Teacher Voice Awards, and I want to invite up someone who has been an incredible ally to us, to teachers, to educators, and to our schools for a very long time, long before he was a council member, and fighting alongside so many people, including President Thompson, who's here, in work deeply based in the communities that they serve. And there's a lot of things to say about Councilmember Fruman. One of the most important is that he is someone from Ward 3 who is always thinking about how it impacts the whole city. And equity is not a word that he just throws around, he means it. And he implements it in policy, and he thinks about how policies will impact every single part of the city. He's done the deep and grueling work for years to figure out exactly how it will impact every school and the educators and our students and parents and families. And now he's been able to take that work to the council as a new Ward 3 council member, where he's been already an incredible ally to teachers fighting alongside us on issues like equitable and transparent pay, but also on teacher retention, on flexible scheduling, and so many things, bringing expertise on education to the council, which is incredibly valuable, and standing alongside our educators every day. So, Councilmember Freeman.
So I'm gonna use the prompt too. It is so great to be here and to be here honoring teachers, to be here with people who I've worked with for years, looking around. I see Mark Simon here, Marcus Batchelor, the other members of Ebony Rose Thompson, who we've worked together for such a long time on education issues. When you talk about valuing the fact that I'm a person from Ward 3 who sees the city as a whole and has a very, very empty emphasis on equity, I want to hold up Ruth Wattenberg also, if we can give Ruth a So I'm sitting here and watching the tally of victories. I was thinking about it on this from the side I was on, because I was one of the people being lobbied. It was relentless to describe. And it really was amazing. I mean, if you look at the victories, Empower Ed was maybe the most effective advocacy organization in this budget cycle. Teacher pay as an example. If the outcome on charter teacher pay came the closest to one person's vision, and that was Scott Knowles. I mean, it was amazing to see the way that was navigated, and I think we got to a great result. I was one of the people torn in different directions on it, but I think that we came out with a great result, broadening the pool of charter teachers who got pay increases and increasing transparency at the same time. Flexible scheduling, I was with you. I supported you at every step along the way. Many of us did. Did we think that it was going to happen? I met with the chairman before it happened, and he said he was going to do it, and I almost fell out of my chair. That didn't come from nowhere. That came from a lot of people doing the work. It's just an anecdote that often we're in a hearing on an education issue, and I'll get a text with a question or an argument, and I'll think, okay, when it's my turn, I'm going to do that. And lo and behold, Zachary does it. Or Brianna does it. So you see what's on the screen at those hearings, but behind it is like screen. And he gets all of his questions asked and answered, and we got to a great result this year for the teachers, for the city, for students, and thank you very much to Empower Ed for all of the work that you do. Let's next year be an even better year. Let's take a bite out of it. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Freeman. And I want to make a point on that, which is that our educators are in school, right? From 8 o'clock in the morning to 4 to 5 o'clock. And it's difficult for parents to be there. It's difficult for students to be there in the room. But all those things that we hear, the fellows will tell you every time we meet, I'm like, we really have to make decisions during this meeting about what we're fighting for. Because I am not going to go out there and push a council member or push anybody to do it unless I hear clearly from you, we all agree on this, right? So this is our chance, right? To get behind something as a consensus of a diverse group of educators. So that when they're in the classroom during the day, I can send those messages and say, hey, teacher's a little busy right now, but don't forget what we told you about this thing. So I appreciate Councilmember Freeman and all the others who helped to make that happen. And now, our teacher voice awards. Slides here. So many teachers to honor today. So many amazing teachers who advocated in so many different ways. And I'm going to start with Brittany Richards. Brittany is a third-year educator at Center City Public Charter School. She is a DC native. She is a mom. She has her bachelor's in elementary education from Bowie State, master's in international leadership and policy from American University, and I got Principal Westerman is here from Center City, and I want to say a little bit about what he said about her nominating her for this award. Brittany is a fierce advocate for everyone in our school community. She recently testified at the DC budget hearing advocating for higher teacher pay and equal funding for charter schools. Last month, she was accepted in the Surge DC Fellowship, a program for promising African American and Latinx talent to enhance their expertise in after-school while empowering them to transform the education ecosystem. She invited Councilmember Louis George to hear students deliver their speeches aligned to her humanities unit. And these are just a few highlights of all the work that she has done at the school level, at the city level, to advocate for all of her students and her families, and always with equity in mind, with her own perspective of all the educators that she works with, and always bringing in that holistic view to all of our work. She's been a fearless advocate in so many ways this year. Brittany Richardson. You're welcome to say a word, but you don't have to. All right, our next Teacher Voice Award. All right, this is a double award here to Ryan Reed, Kramer Middle School, and Lucia Applequist, who's at Czech, DC. Two amazing educators. Ryan has been an educator for 12 years, National Board Certified Special Education Teacher, and Lucia is in her third year. She started in 2020, right when the pandemic started, so she went right into it. And if you want to know why flexible scheduling, I may be the one sending a message to the council members like, hey, right now, this is the time, let's do it. These are the people who led the fight for flexible scheduling this year. How many events you showed up at, the report that you worked on to create it, but everything about what we were going out and telling the council came from our hardworking fellows, all of our fellows, and particularly Ryan and Lucia, who dedicated a lot of their own time, including like editing a 56-page report and getting down to the nitty-gritty details of is this model going to be good? Is this model going to be good? And what do we put out into the world? And how do we talk about it? These educators have done an incredible amount of work on this, and they achieved an incredible thing. So Ryan, Reed, and Lucia. Thanks. Our next one, Michelle Smith. All right, Michelle Smith is a native Washingtonian, former DC resident, current teacher, and fully invested in the Washington metropolitan area with over 28 years of experience in teaching in DC public schools, helping many students and colleagues throughout the years. She's been a recipient of the 2013 District of Columbia Impact Teacher Evaluation Award, and during the last 13 consecutive school years, as a math teacher of various grade levels, it is her goal to move forward with the best practices to continue to foster high student achievement for all children. And I have to read a little bit of what Principal Pilgrim said in nominating her. She works very hard to ensure students are able to advocate for themselves. She is a wonderful addition to the school. Our parents respect her and see her as a partner in this work. She teaches our students math instruction every day and works hard to ensure students have the tools they need to succeed. And so this Teacher Voice Award for excellency in advocating for our students in teacher leadership to Michelle Smith. Destin Hall, Destin, are you here? There's thank you. All right, our next one is for Destin Hall for amplifying teacher voice at the school level. As a proud graduate of 2 historically Black universities, Mr. Hall has accumulated over 20 years of teaching experience with the general education and special education classroom with a wide range of mainstream inclusion and more restrictive settings. His teaching philosophy embodies humility and empathy. With humility, he recognizes every student is unique and has individual strengths and challenges. He understands that his role is not just to teach academic content, but to foster personal growth and development. Based on his teaching philosophy, he was proudly elected WTU building manager by his peers, and with his passion, he advocated for the rights of his colleagues and collaborated with administrators for solutions to problems within the school. Most importantly, he reinforced the fact that teachers are important partners of making school rather than being bystanders to passivity, said principal of McFarland Middle School, Lucas Cook. Congratulations. All right. Stephanie Jackson. All right. Stephanie. And it shows. Oh, here's Principal Michaels is here as well. Principal Michaels. Stephanie Jackson of Learn DC Public Charter School. If you don't know about Learn DC, it's an incredibly interesting school. Which is on a military base, right here in Ward 8. And does incredible work. And we were there recently to do an educator wellness workshop and got to know the school community. And it's an incredible community. And one of our first questions was, we were just like doing a t-shirt giveaway. And we were like, who has been teaching the longest in the school? And everybody was like, don't. We were gonna do like, stand up if you've been here 1 year, stand up if you've been here 5 years. And Ms. Jackson was just like, you don't need to do all this. She's a native of Washingtonian. Stephanie grew up in Prince George's County, Maryland. Attended Mount Vernon College for Women, attending a BA in journalism. Stephanie has been in education for 30 years in Prince George's County Public Schools, DC Public and Public Charter Schools. Taught high school English for 28 years, and kindergarten for 2 years. She says that the joy of teaching has been her life's calling. I want to read a few words from Principal Michaels, who said Stephanie Jackson has consistently used her voice to elevate the conversation of teachers, staff, and parents regarding the needs of all students, especially Black and Brown, in spaces where they are the minority. With over 30 years of teaching experience, Ms. Jackson's unapologetic resolve for the Black liberation pedagogy she employs in her classroom is exemplary. Many would learn from her. She's unafraid to point out how anti-Blackness and white dominant culture influence the perspectives and experiences of Black and Brown children. And she provides hope in a community where Black joy does not have the recognition it deserves. So for all that she's done to uplift the voice of Black,
I would like to thank Fraser O'Leary, who he does not remember me, and I know he doesn't, but way back when I decided to go into charter school, he was my mentor for bringing a advanced placement program to my entire school. We did science, chemistry, biology, chemistry, English, and social studies. I had his opportunity, sir, as well. I walked into the building and there was a young lady who said, because of me, she did not decide to do something different. And then she would want to get a college degree even after 8 or 9 years of me not having seen her. So to my principal, thank you so very much for upholding me this year. It's been a tough year. To my mother, my children, my sister, thank you so very much.
All right, our next award, Dominique Moore. And Dominique is an incredible, passionate, and absolutely 100% fearless educator in so many ways. Dominique is at Johnson Middle School. And I want to tell just a little bit about what she has done as a fellow this year and how she has led. So we throw fellows into the deep end. Looking at some of the fellows who just started this month, and they've already seen some of the asks like, hey, there's this thing going on a week from now. Do you want to be featured? Do you want to be a panelist? Do you want to testify at this thing? And we do that because we think teachers already know how to speak their truth. They don't need to learn from us how to speak their truth. They need to be provided the venue to do it, right? The connections to do it, the platform to do it, for you to how to speak your truth. And Dominique is absolutely someone who knew how to do that right away. And we had our Teacher Voice Festival at the very beginning of the year. Chairman Mendelson was there. And Dominique, as well as Alice, who couldn't be here tonight, but another fearless advocate and fellow, we're leading our democracy team this year. And the goal of the democracy team is really to make sure that teachers' voices can be more accessible and be more heard in the system, because the system is more democratic itself. And what that involved for them was initially a fight for an education committee on the DC Council, and also making our hearings much more accessible for teachers to testify at. And so Dominique and Alice did not let the chairman go for probably 30, 40 minutes at their table. And they said, you're not leaving until you make a commitment to us that if we sign up to testify, we can testify after the school day is finished at 4 o'clock. And you make space for educators to testify when we are not on the clock and trying to manage our students and try to testify and have our voice heard at the same time. And when he left, sure enough, within a day or two, got that call from the office that they were going to do that. And they were going to, hopefully permanently, and have now done so throughout the year, move teachers to the end of the list where necessary when they sign up, so that teachers could testify at the end of the school day. With very little training, right, and her own voice and fearlessness, she went to the chairman of the council and said, I'm not ending this conversation until you tell me you're going to do this, and made that happen, and provided that platform for so many other educators to be able to have their voice heard, including at a hearing that went till 11:59 p.m. The budget hearing this year, where probably more teachers than have ever testified in the council hearing testified this year. So Dominique Moore, a winner of our Fearless Advocacy.
Right.
A woman of many words. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for creating a platform for us to be able to do exactly what we do. Just like you said, some of us just need a venue and an opportunity and a space to be able to speak. I plan to be here for a while, so let's do this.
Yeah.
Also been an incredible champion. Every time we met with council members, she was lobbying on community schools, an incredible push for expanding our community schools. All right. And our last Mr. Bose, the Dean of Empower Ed, who has been there since the beginning, and is in many ways my right hand, and the person who can put things in the way you've been searching for days, and say it succinctly and say it powerfully. Ms. Dubose has been teaching in many, many contexts for 30 years. She has led her own school. She has taught in many schools throughout the country and here in DC. She graduated from Duke Ellington School of the Arts and now teaches in Duke Ellington School of the Arts. And I don't know how you haven't gotten this award before now. But in this particular year, Gabrielle took on a lot more than she takes on in any year. Gabrielle is our teacher leadership facilitator. She helps us with our school-based work. She helps us with our fellowship, and she's a full-time DCPS teacher. She does a little bit of everything, but she is also one of those people behind the scenes influencing everything we do and providing that wisdom from all the years that she has been in the classroom and in education. But in addition to all the wisdom that she's provided that has informed our advocacy work and our work with schools, Gabrielle took on a fight this year for her school, Duke Ellington School of the Arts, which has gone through a lot of transition in different phases of its development as a school. And this year, in a struggle about what the future and identity of Duke Ellington School of the Arts would be, which is a treasured institution, as everybody knows, to Washington, D.C., Gabrielle was able to take all of those advocacy skills that she has learned over the years, not just from Empower Ed, but from all the work that she's done in advocacy and education and politics, to put it to work in her own school, to build a coalition, to bring the principal in, to make sure that they had consensus at the school, and to figure out how to take that fight to the people who needed to hear their voices about why it was so important to protect the essence of the program that they were fighting for and that she believes in. So Gabrielle DeBose, the Teacher Voice Award for School of
I would just say that equity is critically important to our present and our future. It does not come easy, but it's worth the fight. So find where your place is in it and get in the fight. We need you, right? Our children are our present and our future, make no mistake. So please get involved and keep supporting Empower Ed.
incredibly wise speech, and then cap it off with a little ask or a little plug. Really appreciate that. So thank you, all of you, for being here, for supporting Empower Ed, for donating and sustaining this work, which is really, really important. If you haven't and want to consider giving on a monthly basis to sustain our work, we really need it. And I'll tell you why. As I mentioned at the beginning, this work is authentically rooted in the experience of our educators in our schools, not corporate donors, right, or the folks who can write the biggest checks, but the people who want to actually inform the work, who are working with our students every day in our schools. And the only way we can do that is if the people who are supporting us and sustaining the work are the people who are in that fight and understand that fight. We're in our school communities with our students, our educators, our parents, and families. And I want to thank one more time Mark Vernon from the Mandy and David team for their incredible sponsorship and allowing so many teachers to attend tonight. DC Action, Washington Teachers Union. Again, professional is proposed for the venue. Thank you so much to everybody for coming out. There are a lot of ways to stay involved. So what I'm going to say is if you have not gotten a program, on the back of the program, there's a QR code. Please scan the QR code. We may have won a lot of fights at the council this year for things like flexible scheduling and growing your own programs and other things. But the fight is not done, because let me tell you, as soon as you win those things, the really hard work begins. Next week, they're going to vote on the Budget Support Act. That's where the rubber meets the road. What is this going to look like? How many schools are going to get it, right? How is it going to be implemented? When is it going to be implemented? Which schools get access? Will we find out which schools get access, right? All the details of these things. And once those votes happen, and this goes to DCPS and to OSSE and to all the folks who are going to work on it, we need you to be involved, to keep your voices involved. And our next group of fellows, raise your hand if you're a fellow or an incoming fellow in the room. Round of applause to all of our fellows. They're about to dream up a whole bunch of new things that we're going to go out and do over the course of the next year. So we need you to fight alongside them in the coming years. So scan that code, find out how you can be involved, and spend a little time. Don't forget the drink tickets. It's on us. So please continue to eat and drink, get to know each other, and thanks so much for coming out.
Stop the recording. Scott. Stop the recording.